The last seat. My parents were wildlife biologists who spent most of their time deep in the Alaskan wilderness, though we lived in Seattle whenever their research allowed it. For the holidays, Mom and I decided to fly out to meet Dad at his station near Fairbanks. It was Christmas Eve 1971, and I could barely sit still, thinking about spending the break with him, surrounded by the vast forests we all loved. The airport was a blur of noise and color. Families embracing, travelers hurrying toward gates, little kids clutching wrapped presents as if they might vanish. Mom and I boarded the Lockheed Electra with its 90 passengers, and found our seats near the back. I had the window, 19F, and she sat beside me. "This will be a quick hop," she said, giving my hand a squeeze. "Your father's probably waiting with the tree already decorated." The flight started quietly, peacefully. We rose from Seattle just after noon, and I leaned against the window, watching the city shrink behind us. The Cascade Mountains unfurled below, rugged, snow-capped, ancient. Then clouds swallowed us, thickening until the sky dimmed like someone had slowly turned a dial. About 25 minutes in, the intercom crackled. The captain's voice was calm, but clipped. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are encountering some rough air. Please fasten your seatbelts." Mom glanced at me. "Just a storm," she whispered. "We have flown through far worse." But the turbulence was not like anything I had felt before. The plane jolted, rising and dropping violently, as though an invisible giant had grabbed it and was shaking us apart. Lightning flashed so close it bleached the cabin white, and thunder vibrated through the metal skin of the aircraft. Luggage spilled from overhead bins. A child cried. People gasped, prayed, clutched their armrests like lifelines. I gripped mine until my knuckles turned bone white. "Mom, are we going to be okay?" She tried to nod, but there was fear in her eyes she could not hide. "Hopefully, this goes all right," she murmured. Then a lightning bolt hit us. Direct. The wing exploded in a bloom of fire. The engine shrieked. The aircraft lurched hard, tilting nose down, metal groaning under forces it was not built to withstand. Oxygen masks dropped in a jittery, terrifying cascade. Mom reached for my hand, her voice breaking. "Now it is all over." I barely had time to scream before the plane began tearing apart. The fuselage twisted, panels ripped away. A deafening roar filled my ears, and wind blasted through the cabin as if the sky itself were trying to swallow us. And then my seat yanked loose. The world spun. I tumbled through open air, still strapped in, helpless as a rag doll. The screams vanished. The fire vanished. The plane vanished. There was only rushing wind and the distant blur of dark green far below. Blackness crashed over me. When consciousness returned, it did so with pain, raw, blinding pain. My head throbbed, my right eye would not focus, and something deep in my shoulders screamed with every breath. I was lying on a forest floor, half tangled in vines and twisted roots that seemed to pulse like living veins. My seat was wedged into mud as though the wilderness had reached up with shadowy hands to catch me. My dress was shredded, one shoe missing. Blood seeped from a cut on my arm. My leg burned where a long, angry gash had opened. "Mom!" My voice barely came out. "Mom!" Nothing answered but the eerie calls of birds, the incessant buzz of insects, and the distant howl of wolves that sounded almost like whispered names. The forest felt alive, watching, breathing with a malevolent hunger. Strange shadows danced between the trees, shapes that looked like forgotten souls lurking just out of sight, murmuring secrets in the wind. I tried to stand, nearly collapsed, then used a fallen branch as a crutch. Dad's old lessons came back in flashes, but now twisted with dread. Find water. Follow it downstream. Water leads to people, or to the abyss. A faint trickle guided me to a stream, its waters dark and murmuring as if carrying voices from the deep. I drank, praying it would not make me sick, but thirst did not give me other choices. As I knelt, I swore I saw faces in the ripples, pale, distorted reflections that were not my own, grinning with hollow eyes. Fear crept in like cold fog. Bears, wolves, creatures that stalked in the night, and worse, whispers of ancient spirits said to haunt these woods, guardians of the wild who claim the lost. Every rustle sent chills racing up my spine, as if unseen fingers brushed my skin. By afternoon, I found a small bag of candies snagged on a branch. Debris from the crash. It felt like a cursed gift, the wrappers glowing faintly in the dim light, as if infused with some otherworldly energy. I rationed them, sucking each one slowly, but each bite brought visions, flashes of the plane's fiery descent, echoed by ghostly laughter in the trees. Night was the worst. The forest transformed into a world of black shapes and glowing eyes that blinked from the underbrush, watching, waiting. My wounds throbbed. Flies swarmed the open cuts relentlessly, their buzzing like a chorus of damned souls. I curled beneath a bush, shivering as rain soaked through the leaves, the drops whispering forgotten names. Sleep came in short bursts, haunted by Mom's face, the lightning that seemed summoned by dark forces, the tearing metal that echoed like the wail of banshees. In my dreams, the forest spirits circled, their forms shifting from tree to beast, promising eternal wandering if I faltered. The days blurred into a nightmarish haze. I limped along the stream as it widened into a river, its currents pulling at me like grasping hands from below. My arms swelled hot and red, infected by something unnatural. Soon I felt movement beneath the skin, maggots squirming where flies had laid their eggs, but these felt alive with malice, as if possessed by the forest's wrath. Horror surged through me, visions of them burrowing deeper, whispering curses in my veins, but there was nothing I could do. Not yet. Sometimes planes passed overhead so close I could hear the engines, their lights piercing the canopy like searching eyes of the divine. I screamed, waved, begged, but the trees closed in, branches twisting like claws to hide me from rescue, as if the wilderness claimed me as its own. On the fourth day, I stumbled into a clearing and saw 3 seats driven deep into the earth, like graves clawed open by unearthly forces. Bodies still strapped in, half buried, their faces frozen in eternal screams. A woman's hand, nails polished bright red, protruded from the soil, fingers curled as if beckoning me to join them. Not Mom's hand. Relief and grief tangled into something wordless and heavy, a weight that pulled at my soul, accompanied by faint moans carried on the wind, echoes of the dead, perhaps, unwilling to let go. Hunger hollowed me out, a gnawing void that invited darker thoughts. The candies disappeared, each last one tasting of ash and regret. I walked for hours on trembling legs that felt too thin to hold me, the ground shifting beneath my feet as if the earth itself breathed. My hallucinations began in earnest, fueled by the mystic veil of the woods. Voices calling my name from the shadows, not just echoes but spectral calls. My mother's plea twisted into a wail, my father's warnings laced with doom. Shadows shaped like people slipped between trees, their forms translucent, reaching out with icy fingers that left frost on my skin. One night, I saw a figure in the distance, tall and cloaked in mist, eyes glowing like embers, whispering of ancient pacts broken by intruders like us. Rain returned, thunder rolled like the laughter of gods, and I shivered so violently my teeth ached, convinced the storm was alive, pursuing me for surviving what should have claimed all. By the 9th day, I was barely standing, my body a vessel for the forest's curse. I let the river carry me at times, floating on my back because walking hurt too much, the waters murmuring secrets of drowned souls who had wandered before me. And then, like a scene from a fever dream, a small wooden cabin appeared on stilts beside the riverbank, its door creaking open as if inviting me into the unknown. Inside, I found a tarp for shelter, a can of gasoline that reeked of forbidden rituals, and I knew what I had to do, purge the evil within. I poured it over my infected arm. The maggots writhed out by the dozens, 30, 40, dropping onto the dirt in a squirming mass, their bodies glowing faintly before bursting into wisps of smoke, as if exorcised. The pain was unbearable, a fire that cleansed but scarred the soul, yet it saved my life from the encroaching darkness. Hours later, real voices approached, cutting through the haze. 3 men, local hunters, walked toward the cabin, their footsteps echoing like judgments. I hid at first, unsure if they were real or another trick of my exhausted brain, perhaps manifestations of the spirits testing me. One spotted me and froze. "Emily, I am from the plane," I croaked. "The one from Seattle?" They stared like I was a ghost risen from the depths. "No survivors," one whispered. "That is what the radio said." "Please," I begged, "help me." They gave me bread, fruit, clean water, simple things that tasted like salvation, banishing the shadows for a moment. "We will take you to the village in the morning," the bearded man said softly. "You are safe now." 7 hours by canoe brought us to a small settlement, the journey haunted by fleeting glimpses of ethereal figures along the banks. A doctor treated my wounds and stabilized me, his hands steady against the lingering curse. Word spread quickly, and soon a plane arrived to fly me, ironically, back to Fairbanks. Dad was waiting. His face was pale, trembling. "My girl," he choked out, pulling me into his arms with a gentleness that broke my heart. "We thought you were gone." 91 people had died. Mom had survived the fall, too. But not the hours afterward. The wilderness had swallowed the crash site so completely the search teams never saw it, as if veiled by mystic forces. Recovery took weeks. Bones healed. Infections faded. But the fear, the falling, the darkness, the loneliness, and the whispers of the unseen never left completely. Still, I finished school, became a biologist like my parents. Returned to the wilderness many times, though with a reverence I never had before, offering silent tributes to the spirits. That Christmas Eve flight changed everything. I survived because of knowledge, luck, and a will I did not know I had, forged in the crucible of horror. But the shadows of those 9 days still follow me, quiet reminders of the thin line between life and the endless green silence, where the mystic and the monstrous dwell. The stranger. I boarded the flight in Chicago on Christmas morning with my mind already halfway across the country, picturing my family waiting in Atlanta. I had been away for months, and the idea of walking into a warm house full of lights and familiar voices felt like the best gift I could imagine. The plane was packed with holiday travelers, parents juggling bags and restless kids, couples whispering over shared earphones, solo passengers dozing under thin blankets. It all had that soft, weary warmth of holiday travel. I settled into my window seat, trying to get comfortable when I noticed the young man a few rows ahead. Something about him stood out. Not his looks, not his clothes, just his stillness, as if he were a shadow frozen in place, watching from another world. He sat rigidly, staring forward with an intensity that did not match the easy, distracted mood around him. No book, no headphones, no restless shifting, just waiting, his eyes like dark voids that seemed to pull in the light. I assumed he was afraid of flying and turned my attention to a magazine instead, but a chill lingered, like a whisper from the unseen brushing against my neck. The hours drifted by in a pleasant haze, though shadowed by an uneasy fog. Meal trays clattered down the aisle. The engines droned steadily, a low hum that echoed like distant thunder from a storm not yet arrived, and conversation rose and fell around me. The woman seated beside me, Margaret, an older lady with kind eyes and a warm laugh, told me she was returning from visiting her daughter in the Midwest. She talked about her grandkids, how they were probably tearing the house apart in excitement, and I shared how much I missed my mom's Christmas baking. At 30,000 feet, wrapped in that gentle cabin hum, it all felt peaceful, almost cozy, yet I could not shake the feeling that something ancient and malevolent watched from the clouds outside, its gaze piercing the metal hull. When we were about 20 minutes from Atlanta, I saw the young man stand and walk to the restroom. No big deal until he stayed there and stayed long enough that a few people looked up, their faces paling as if sensing an invisible presence. When he finally emerged, He returned to his seat and pulled a blanket up over himself completely head to toe like a child hiding, or perhaps a specter shrouding itself in moral cloth. The cabin was not cold, but a sudden draft seemed to sweep through, carrying faint murmurs that sounded like forgotten prayers or curses. Margaret leaned toward me. "He looks unwell. Maybe airsick." "Maybe," I said, though unease prickled up my spine like icy fingers tracing my bones. His hands moved strangely under the blanket, quick, almost rhythmic, as if performing a ritual in the dim light, summoning shadows that danced faintly on the cabin walls. I tried to ignore it, but the air grew thick, heavy with an otherworldly weight. Then came the first sharp pop. It was small but jarring, like a balloon bursting, or the crack of a spirit breaking free. People glanced around, eyes wide with unspoken dread. I sat up straighter, my heart pounding as if echoing a distant drumbeat from the void. A beat later, an acrid scent drifted through the aisle, thin at first, then unmistakable, something chemical, something burning, laced with the rotten tang of decay, as if from a grave unearthed. "Do you smell that?" I whispered, my voice trembling. Margaret sniffed, her brows pinching. "It is not food. It is like something cursed." I scanned the cabin and then saw it, thin traces of smoke curling out from the edges of that blanket, twisting like ethereal tendrils reaching for the living. A flight attendant approached briskly. "Sir, are you okay?" she asked, her voice tight but steady, though her eyes flickered with fear, as if she too felt the presence of something unholy. He did not answer, but a low groan seemed to emanate from beneath the fabric, not quite human. Another pop exploded beneath the blanket, louder this time, followed by a quick flare of orange, flames flickering up, catching fabric, bright and sudden, hungry like the fires of some infernal realm. Screams erupted, piercing the air like wails of the damned. People jerked out of their seats, shadows lengthening unnaturally across the floor. The woman in front of him shouted, "Fire! Fire!" her voice cracking with terror. The cabin detonated into chaos, the lights flickering as if the plane itself recoiled from the horror. I felt my pulse slam against my ribs as dark smoke rushed upward, coiling like serpents born of nightmare. The man did not thrash or cry out. He just sat there eerily calm as flames climbed his lap and licked the sidewall of the aircraft, his silhouette against the fire resembling a demon unbound. The fire crackled like it was feeding on something more than fabric, souls, perhaps, or the very essence of the holiday spirit twisted into ash. "He has got something," someone yelled behind me, their words echoing with prophetic dread. A flight attendant lunged for a fire extinguisher, blasting foam across the aisle, the white spray hissing like a ward against evil. The flames sputtered but did not die immediately, popping, hissing, resisting, as if fueled by a dark enchantment that mocked our efforts. Margaret clutched my arm fiercely, her nails digging in like claws. "What is happening? Oh God, are we going to be okay?" I did not know. All I could think was that fire on an airplane was one of the worst things imaginable, one spark in the wrong place and we would be gone before we hit the ground, dragged into an abyss by unseen forces. Whispers seemed to fill the cabin now, faint voices murmuring in the smoke, calling names, promising doom. Then a Texan passenger, a tall man with a shaved head, leapt over the seats with a kind of fearless purpose I had only seen in tales of heroes battling the supernatural, his face set like a warrior facing a ghost. "Grab him," someone shouted, their voice laced with hysteria. The young man under the blanket shifted, reaching for something in his pocket, his movements deliberate, as if guided by an invisible hand from beyond. His face was blank, void of panic, as if he were not burning at all, but channeling some ancient curse. The Texan man tackled him, ripping the blanket away, and the sight beneath chilled me to the bone, freezing the blood in my veins. His pants were scorched and smoldering, and attached to his underwear was a partially melted device, powdery, smoking, clinging like something half-engineered, half-decayed, pulsating faintly as if alive with malevolent energy, shadows writhing around its edges. "It is a bomb!" the Texan man yelled, struggling to tear it free, his hands blistering as if touched by hellfire. I moved without thinking, helping pin the man's legs as others swarmed around, the air thick with the scent of brimstone and fear. The heat from his burned clothing radiated upward, carrying waves of unnatural warmth that seemed to sap the life from the cabin. The stench of chemicals and cooked fabric filled my lungs, mingled with something deeper, like the rot of forgotten tombs. Every second felt like it might be our last. One wrong jolt, one spark, and the whole thing could detonate, unleashing a cataclysm that would pull us all into eternal darkness. Passengers cried, screamed, prayed, their voices blending into a chorus of despair. A kid somewhere behind us wailed, "We are going to crash," his innocent fear amplifying the horror. His mother tried to soothe him, voice quivering, but her words faltered as shadows seemed to creep closer, whispering temptations of surrender. The flight attendant, hands trembling, passed plastic restraints forward, the material feeling cold and lifeless in my grip. We cuffed the man while he murmured softly in a language I could not recognize, eyes never leaving what remained of the device, his gaze holding a depthless void that pulled at my soul. Then he spoke English, quiet, flat, emotionless, explosive device. The words felt cold enough to stop my heart, echoing like a prophecy fulfilled. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, calm but shaking at the edges, as if he too sensed the supernatural veil thinning. "Ladies and gentlemen, remain seated. We are declaring an emergency and will be landing shortly. Crew, secure the cabin." We dragged the suspect to the front, extinguishing the last embers clinging to his clothes, each spark dying with a hiss that sounded like a sigh from the beyond. His skin was blistered and raw, yet he barely reacted, his composure unearthly, as if possessed by a force indifferent to pain. Meanwhile, the Texan man, burns on his hands, clothes singed, refused help, insisting on staying close in case the suspect tried anything else, his eyes fierce like a guardian against the night. Minutes stretched into an eternity, the plane seeming to groan under the weight of the curse. I stared out the window, watching the ground rise toward us, half expecting the cabin to shake apart before we made it, visions of fiery apparitions dancing in the clouds. When we hit the runway, the landing was hard enough to rattle teeth, jolting us like a final exorcism. Sirens were already blaring outside, piercing the air like alarms against the encroaching dark. Fire trucks and police vehicles boxed us in immediately, their lights flashing red and blue, warding off the shadows. Officers stormed the aisle, seizing the suspect and rushing him off the plane, his form vanishing like a banished spirit. The rest of us sat in stunned silence, waiting to be questioned, the adrenaline draining from our bodies in shivers and tears, leaving behind a hollow ache where the horror had nested. That night, instead of sitting in my parents' living room with hot chocolate and a Christmas tree glowing beside me, I lay awake in an Atlanta hotel room, replaying every second, the smoke that twisted like ghosts, the pops that echoed ancient warnings, that man's empty, determined eyes that seemed to hold secrets from the grave. I have flown dozens of times since. But every time the cabin lights dim, every time someone sits too still for too long, that moment returns, accompanied by whispers in the wind, shadows in the corners of my vision. The day a Christmas flight almost became a falling fireball over the city, touched by a mysticism that blurred the line between terror and the supernatural. And how close it came to being our last, a descent into an endless, haunted void. A witness. It was a few days before Christmas in 1985, the kind of cold, pale morning where the sky looks washed out and tired, as if the heavens themselves were holding back some ancient secret, whispering warnings through the frost-laden air. I had decided to leave early, figuring I would surprise my aunt and uncle by helping with decorations at their little place out in the Midwest. The highways were mostly empty, just me, my old sedan humming along, and the soft crackle of the radio drifting between Christmas songs and static that sometimes sounded like faint, ethereal voices murmuring from beyond. I had a trunk full of wrapped gifts and a mind already halfway to the smell of pine reeds and cinnamon cookies, but an uneasy fog seemed to cling to the road, as if the landscape itself was alive with unseen eyes watching my every mile. I figured I would be there by noon. I had no idea that drive would mark me for life, etching shadows into my soul that no amount of holiday lights could ever banish. About an hour in, cruising down a lonely stretch of Highway 50 lined with frost-kissed pines that loomed like silent sentinels guarding forbidden paths, I came up behind a faded blue Ford traveling slower than the rest of the world. At first, I thought nothing of it. Elderly folks often drove cars like that, cautious against the invisible dangers lurking in the mist. But as I closed the distance, the details sharpened, emerging from the haze like apparitions. Two men in the front, burly and stiff, both wearing dark jackets that seemed to absorb the weak sunlight. And in the back, an elderly couple, small and fragile looking, like they had been dropped into the wrong car by some cruel twist of fate. The woman's silver hair was pinned neatly, her posture small and tense, as if she were bracing against an invisible force. The man beside her wore a wool cap, his shoulders drawn in tight, his face etched with lines that spoke of unspoken terrors. Something about them looked off, out of place, not relaxed travelers on a holiday outing, but passengers who were trying very hard not to be noticed, as if pursued by ghosts from the past. As I eased up behind them, the woman turned her head just slightly. Our eyes met through the rear window, and in that moment, a chill pierced me like a spectral hand gripping my heart. Her face was pale, her lips pressed thin, her eyes holding a silent question or a plea that echoed in my mind without words. She formed a few words I could not hear, but they seemed to linger in the air, carried by a sudden gust of wind that howled like a distant lament. Before I could make sense of it, the older man put a calming hand on her arm, though his touch trembled as if warding off an encroaching darkness. Then the driver glanced up at his mirror, his eyes reflecting something cold and otherworldly. I snapped my gaze away, pretending to fiddle with the radio as if I had not seen anything, but the static now buzzed with what sounded like fragmented whispers, urging me to flee. "Why so slow?" I muttered, my voice barely audible over the growing unease. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was my imagination, stirred by old tales of haunted highways where the lost wandered forever. But a cold knot began to form in my gut, twisting like roots from a grave, pulling me deeper into the mystery. A mile later, the Ford veered sharply onto a narrow side road, disappearing into dense woods where the trees twisted unnaturally, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers beckoning the unwary. Before I had time to talk myself out of it, I turned after them, the gravel crunching under my tires like bones underfoot. I told myself I was just making sure everything was fine, that if they were lost or their car was acting up, maybe I could help, but deep down, I knew I was following because something was wrong, an ancient malice stirring in the air, drawing me into its web. The gravel road was quiet except for the crunch under my tires, but faint echoes seemed to rebound from the trees, as if the forest itself was repeating secrets long buried. The trees leaned in close, tall and dark, swallowing the light and casting shadows that shifted like living entities, whispering names I could not quite hear. Up ahead, the Ford slowed, then rolled to a stop near a clearing shrouded in mist that rose from the ground like breath from the undead. I braked far back, cut my engine, and watched through shaking fingers, my breath fogging the window as if the cold outside was seeping into my very soul. The two men got out first. One was tall with a ragged beard, his movements sharp and impatient, his eyes glinting with a feral hunger that seemed not entirely human. The other was shorter, but thick and muscular, built like he had been carved out of cinder block, his presence radiating a heavy, oppressive aura that made the air thicken. They yanked open the back doors and hauled the elderly couple out onto the gravel, their grips like claws from the abyss. The old man stumbled, his feet slipping on the frost as if the earth itself rejected him. The woman steadied him with trembling hands, her face a mask of quiet dread. "Please," the old man said, voice thin and afraid, quivering like a leaf in a storm from beyond. "We gave you the money. Just let us go. We will not say a word." A chill ran through me, colder than the winter wind, as if the words summoned spirits from the fog. The tall man laughed, a low, mean sound that made the hair on my neck stand up, echoing unnaturally through the trees as if joined by mocking voices from the shadows. You think we are idiots? We know you have more. That bank slip was not everything. Bank slip? The shorter one grabbed the woman, many I would soon learn, and shoved her toward the treeline, his touch leaving her wincing as if burned by unseen fire. Come on, tell us where the rest is, or this gets worse. My heart thudded painfully, each beat resonating with the distant rumble of thunder that was not there, as if the sky mourned what was to come. This was not a misunderstanding. This was an abduction, laced with a horror that felt predestined, as if the woods had called them here for a ritual sacrifice. I slid out of my car, crouched low, and followed them at a distance, the underbrush clutching at my clothes like ghostly hands trying to hold me back. Each snapped twig under my boots sounded like a gunshot, amplified by the silence that pressed in, broken only by faint, disembodied sighs. Their voices carried through the forest as they pushed deeper into the woods, the path winding like a serpent through the gloom. They stopped in a small clearing dusted with frost that glittered like shattered souls under the pale light. The tall one drew a pistol from his jacket, small, dark, deadly, its barrel seeming to absorb the surrounding shadows. Last chance, he said, his voice dripping with malice. Where is the safe? We saw the Christmas cards. Old folks like you always hide cash. Harold, her husband, tried standing taller, though his knees shook, his face pale as if drained by invisible leeches. We do not have a safe, he said. That was everything. Please, it is Christmas. Our family is waiting for us. Evelyn began to cry softly, her tears freezing on her cheeks like diamonds of despair. We told you the truth. 8,500. That is all we have got. The tall man raised the gun, and the air grew heavier, charged with an electric tension that made my skin crawl, as if spirits gathered to witness the act. I pressed myself behind a tree, breath locked in my chest, sweat freezing cold on my neck, visions flickering in my periphery, pale figures lurking just out of sight, their eyes hollow and accusing. 1, the man counted, his voice echoing like a curse. Harold closed his eyes and whispered a prayer, the words hanging in the air like mist. 2. Evelyn's voice cracked. No, please. 3. The gunshot cracked through the forest like lightning, splintering the silence and summoning a chorus of unseen wails from the depths of the woods. Harold hit the ground, the dead weight of him sinking into the frost, blood spreading like ink from a forbidden tome. Evelyn screamed, a thin, piercing sound that cut clean through me, reverberating as if amplified by ethereal echoes, drawing closer the shadows that now seemed to pulse with life. Shut up! The shorter man barked, his eyes flashing with demonic glee. He turned the gun on her. She backed up, hands out, eyes full of horror that mirrored the abyss. Why? Why are you doing this? Because we can, he snarled, his words twisting in the wind like an incantation. One more shot. One more body hitting the ground, the impact sending ripples through the frost as if the earth hungered for more. I bit down hard on my lip to stop myself from crying out, blood welling into my mouth with a metallic tang that grounded me amid the nightmare. The clearing spun, the trees blurring into grotesque shapes that leered down. The men rifled through the bodies, muttering curses that seemed to invoke darker forces. Grab their wallets, the tall one said. Make it look messy. What about the car? Leave it. No one comes out here, except the restless ones. Then they started walking back toward me, their footsteps crunching like judgments from the grave. Panic surged white-hot, mingled with visions of spectral hands reaching from the soil. I moved back slowly, too slowly, the undergrowth whispering warnings. A branch cracked under my foot, loud as thunder in the haunted quiet. The tall one froze. Hear that? The other grunted. Yeah, check it out, might be one of them watchers from the old stories. The footsteps came closer, deliberate and ominous. I bolted, branches whipping my face like vengeful spirits, thorns tearing at my coat as if trying to claim me. I heard them shouting behind me, angry, startled, close. their voices blending with inhuman growls from the fog. My lungs burned, each breath laced with the scent of decay. My legs felt made of rubber, weakening as if drained by the forest's curse. I burst out of the trees and sprinted to my car, keys shaking in my hand like talismans against evil. They slipped, clattered to the gravel with a sound that echoed mockingly. I snatched them, jammed one into the ignition, and heard the engine roar to life just as shapes broke through the treeline, their forms distorted in the mist like demons emerging from the veil. I tore out of there, gravel flying, heart pounding so hard the world blurred into a haze of terror. In the mirror, I saw them standing at the edge of the road, watching with eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. I did not know if they had seen my face, my car, my license plate, or if something more sinister had marked me. I did not look back again, but the whispers followed, faint and persistent. At the sheriff's office, I stumbled through the door, shaking uncontrollably as if possessed. I saw murder. I managed, 2 of them off Highway 50, an old couple. The deputy's expression shifted from doubt to alarm as I described everything: Harold and Evelyn, the forced bank withdrawal, the 2 armed men whose presence felt like harbingers of doom. By evening, deputies found the scene exactly as I said, the car abandoned like a relic, the blood staining the frost like a sacrificial altar, the clearing veiled in unnatural fog, the bodies cold and still as if their souls had been harvested. Harold and Evelyn Whitaker, well known in the nearby town of Cedar Grove, had vanished that morning. They had been abducted, forced to withdraw their savings, then executed in the woods amid legends of haunted grounds where the dead refused to rest. The community was shattered, whispers of curses spreading like wildfire. The suspects, Wade and Harlan, 2 local brothers known for drugs and violence, were quickly whispered about, but no one dared testify. They had reputations for making witnesses disappear, aided by dark pacts, some said. The case froze, then faded into the annals of forgotten horrors, but fear did not, coiling around my life like vines from those woods. I moved away, changed numbers, avoided back roads where the shadows grew long and alive. Every Christmas, the memory returned, the gunshots that echoed like thunder from the underworld, the scream that pierced the veil between worlds, the way the trees swallowed the sound while releasing faint moans of their own. Then, in 2012, the case finally cracked open, like a tomb unsealed. Harlan died under mysterious circumstances, his body found twisted as if by unseen hands. People loosened their tongues, spilling tales laced with superstition. Wade was arrested, tried, and put away forever, his trial haunted by reports of strange occurrences, whispers in the courtroom, shadows that moved on their own. Justice came, but the ghosts never left, lingering in my dreams as spectral figures of the Whitakers, their eyes pleading eternally. Even now, I avoid lonely stretches of highway during the holidays, where the air grows cold enough and the trees stand close enough to bridge the gap to the other side. Sometimes, in the quiet, I still hear Evelyn's scream echoing through the woods, joined by other voices, calling me back to that cursed clearing. If you are traveling this season, stay on the main road. Stay where there are eyes and lights and people. You never know what waits in the quiet places, human or otherwise, hungry for the living. The shortcut. I met Daniel at work a little over 2 years earlier. He was the kind of man who could make a 10-hour shift feel like a lunch break. Tall, charming, with a smile that softened even the worst days, but there was always something shadowy in his eyes, like a secret lurking just beneath the surface, whispering promises of darkness. We kept things quiet because of the company's no dating policy and because he had a longtime girlfriend he swore was basically just a roommate, though late at night, doubts would creep in like fog rolling off a forgotten lake. Now I believed him. Or maybe I wanted to believe him more than I cared to admit, ignoring the chills that sometimes ran down my spine when he touched me, as if his hands carried echoes of unseen regrets. As Christmas approached, the secrecy became unbearable, heavy like an invisible shroud pressing down on my chest. One evening after closing, as we stood in the empty stockroom beneath the humming fluorescent lights that flickered like restless spirits, I finally said what had been boiling inside me for months. Choose me or end it, I told him. He looked at me with that serious, steady gaze of his and nodded, but his eyes seemed to hold a glimmer of something ancient and malevolent. I will, he said. Let's get away on Christmas Eve. Just us. A hotel outside Pineville. No distractions. I want you to see I am serious. Those words felt like a promise, but they echoed in my mind with a hollow ring, as if spoken from a distant, haunted chamber. I clung to them anyway, pushing away the uneasy dreams that had started plaguing me, visions of shadowed figures watching from the corners of empty rooms. I packed light, warm clothes, a wrapped gift for him, toiletries, my charger. We left Denver around midday, Daniel driving his car while holiday traffic thickened around us, the cars blurring into a stream of lights that seemed to pulse with an unnatural rhythm. Instead of taking the expected route, he steered us north into roads I did not know well, winding paths flanked by dense forests where the trees leaned in like silent watchers, their branches twisting into shapes that resembled grasping hands. Shortcut, he said. Trust me, Grace, it will be worth it. But he was different that day. His hands gripped the wheel so tightly his knuckles drained pale, and he checked the rear-view mirror every couple minutes, as if expecting a phantom pursuer to emerge from the mist. I tried to lighten the mood, but the air in the car grew thick, heavy with an unspoken dread. You okay? I asked, my voice barely cutting through the silence. He forced a smile, but it did not reach his eyes, which darted like those of a man haunted by ghosts. Yeah, just excited. We talked about work, the new year, the idea of finally going public, but his words felt scripted, echoing with a faint, disembodied whisper that I convinced myself was just the wind. Imagine not having to sneak around, I said, trying to ignore the way the shadows outside seemed to deepen unnaturally as we drove deeper into the unknown. He hesitated before replying, a pause filled with the creak of the car that sounded like distant moans. Soon, my brother Thomas might join us later for a drink. He lives nearby and wants to meet you properly. That threw me, a sudden chill sweeping through the car like a spectral breath. Your brother? I thought this was supposed to be our time. He shrugged, his movement stiff, as if controlled by invisible strings. It is Christmas. He will not stay long. He has got a place on the way. Just a quick stop. I should have pushed harder, but the festive music on the radio washed over my unease like a thin coat of paint over a deep crack, though the songs now sounded distorted, their cheerful notes twisting into eerie melodies that set my teeth on edge. About an hour into the drive, his phone buzzed, a sound that reverberated like a warning from the beyond. He glanced at the screen and typed something quickly, his fingers moving with a frantic energy. I caught a phrase, "Operation Ready," before he tucked the phone away sharply, but the words lingered in the air, glowing faintly in my mind like a cursed inscription. Work stuff, he said, but my stomach tightened, coiling like vines from a nightmare. Operation? Since when did our retail job involve operations? But again, I stayed quiet, though the road ahead seemed to narrow, the trees closing in as if the forest itself conspired against me, whispering secrets in the rustling leaves that sounded like my name being called from afar. By the time we pulled up outside Thomas's house, a plain ranch-style place in a quiet Pineville suburb, the daylight had slipped into that blue-gray winter dusk, where the sky hung low and oppressive, pregnant with unseen storms. Thomas answered almost immediately as if he had been standing behind the door, waiting in the shadows, taller than Daniel, rigid posture, a stare that felt like he was sizing me up rather than greeting me, his eyes holding a depthless void that pulled at my soul. His handshake lingered a second too long, his skin cold as if drained of life. Nice to finally meet you, Grace, he said monotone, his voice echoing slightly as if from a hollow chamber. Come in. I have made tea. Inside, the house smelled faintly of chemicals, a sharp, acrid scent that clawed at my nostrils, mingled with something deeper, decay, perhaps, like the rot of forgotten grapes. Cleaning supplies, I told myself, but the air hummed with an unnatural energy, the walls seeming to pulse faintly in the dim light. The living room was cramped and dimly lit, outdated wallpaper curling at the edges like peeling skin from a corpse. Daniel gestured for me to sit, his movement mechanical. "Check-in at the hotel is not until later," he said. "Let's relax here for a bit." Thomas handed me a cup of tea, the steam rising like ghostly tendrils. It tasted bitter, metallic almost, coating my tongue with a flavor that evoked rusted iron and ancient poisons. "Herbal blend," he said, watching me too closely, his gaze piercing as if reading my thoughts. "Good for nerves." We made small talk, my job, my family, my plans, but the brothers kept sharing quick glances, silent messages darting between them like dark omens, and the room felt warmer by the minute, my skin prickling as if invisible eyes watched from the corners, shadows shifting just out of sight. The room felt warmer by the minute, my skin prickling, my mind slowly blurring at the edges, visions flickering, pale faces in the wallpaper patterns, whispers murmuring my secrets back to me. "The tea." "I need the bathroom," I said, pushing myself up before my legs could wobble, the floor tilting as if the house itself breathed. In the hallway, I heard them whispering, their voices low and conspiratorial, laced with a hiss that sounded inhuman. "Now," Thomas murmured. "Wait for the signal," Daniel said. My blood went cold, freezing in my veins like ice from a cursed well. I locked myself in the bathroom and fumbled for my phone with trembling hands, the mirror reflecting my face distorted, eyes wide with terror as if a stranger stared back. I texted my sister, at Daniel's brother's in Pineville. "Something feels off. Call if you do not hear from me in an hour." I flushed the toilet for cover, splashed cold water on my face, but the water felt unnaturally thick, and as I looked up, I swore I saw a shadowy figure behind me in the reflection, vanishing when I turned. Bracing myself, I stepped out, the air heavier now, charged with malice. Back in the living room, they were both standing now, Thomas near the door, Daniel closer to me. Something had shifted in their expressions, no warmth, no pretense, just a cold, predatory gleam that made my heart race. "Everything all right?" Daniel asked, voice tight, echoing with a faint, mocking undertone. I nodded, though the room was tilting faintly, shadows lengthening unnaturally across the floor. "I think we should go to the hotel now." Thomas casually blocked the door, his form seeming to grow taller in the dim light. "Stay. We have a surprise for you." Daniel stepped closer, the charm draining from his face like someone flipping a switch, revealing a mask of darkness beneath. "Grace, I cannot let this go on." "What do you mean?" My voice was paper thin, trembling like a leaf in a spectral wind. He did not answer. Thomas reached into his pocket and pulled out a cloth, wet, glistening, and carrying a sharp chemical smell that burned my nose from several feet away, the fumes curling like malevolent spirits. Chloroform, the word flashed in my mind like a premonition from the grave. "Oh God." Daniel grabbed my arm, his grip iron cold. "You pushed too hard," he said quietly, his breath carrying the scent of decay. "You were going to ruin everything." His girlfriend, the one he never left, the realization hit with the force of a punch, accompanied by a rush of whispers filling my ears, urging me to run. Thomas lunged forward with the cloth, his eyes glowing faintly in the low light. I dodged and grabbed the nearest object, a lamp that felt heavy with cursed weight, and swung it with both hands. It smashed into his arm, knocking the cloth onto the floor with a wet thud that echoed like a final breath. "Help!" I screamed, my voice raw, piercing the air and seeming to summon distant howls from the encroaching night. Daniel seized me from behind, trying to force my head back, his touch sending jolts of icy terror through me. We stumbled, crashing into a chair that splintered like brittle bones. Thomas retrieved the cloth and came at me again, his face flushed with fury, twisted into something demonic. My vision warped, the sedatives in the tea sinking deeper, slowing me, the room spinning with hallucinatory shadows that clawed at the edges. I kicked out blindly, catching Thomas in the knee. He cursed, stumbling, his words twisting into guttural snarls. My phone buzzed in my pocket, my sister calling, but I could not reach it, the air thick with oppressive dread. The cloth came closer, the fumes clawing at my senses, carrying visions of endless darkness. In one desperate move, I jerked my head backward and slammed it into Daniel's face. Something cracked, a sound like thunder from the underworld. He shouted, releasing me, blood spilling like an offering. I bolted, wrenching the front door open and stumbling into the freezing night, screaming as the cold air bit like fangs. House lights flicked on up and down the street, piercing the gloom like wary eyes awakening. A car approached, its headlights cutting through the mist like beacons from another realm. I waved frantically, staggering into its path. The driver, an older man, stopped instantly. "Please," I gasped, collapsing into the passenger seat, the world blurring with ethereal haze. "Call the police." He dialed immediately as Daniel and Thomas retreated into the shadows of the doorway, their forms dissolving like phantoms. The police arrived within minutes, their sirens wailing like banshees. What they found inside still chills me to the bone: a bottle of chloroform, containers of arsenic and mercury that gleamed with unnatural light, notes scrawled in frantic handwriting, search histories delving into dark arts and poisons, evidence that Daniel had been planning this for weeks, perhaps guided by some malevolent force. Thomas's allotment nearby had tools and freshly turned soil that reeked of unearthed secrets, authorities suspecting they intended to bury me there, feeding the earth with my essence. My tea tested positive for sedatives, laced with something that induced nightmarish visions. The brothers were arrested and later sentenced to life in prison, their trial haunted by reports of strange occurrences, whispers in the courtroom, shadows that moved on their own. I survived because of a 10-second text in a locked bathroom and a moment of raw instinct, forged in the fire of terror. But the fear does not disappear, lingering like a curse. Every holiday, every detour, every promise wrapped in romance, I feel a shadow behind it, a warning from the void. Trust can evaporate in a heartbeat. And the people you think you know best can be the ones who kill you, their souls twisted by unseen horrors.